Hello, Herlighters. It's Erin Foley back in the booth talking women's sports. Just a big thank you to all the listeners that have been with me since day one. I love all of you. And a huge welcome to new listeners. So happy that you found my show. I love doing it. Obviously, I'm obsessed. It's just like a fun weekly deep dive into the world of women's sports. So thanks for coming along. And I've got a good one for you today. Sometimes in life when you meet someone and you're like, okay, we're going to be friends. Like you just know it. It's just like kind of this instant fun connection. Well, that's how I feel about this week's guest. Her name is Jillian Hiscock, and she owns a kick ass women's sports bar in Minneapolis called A Bar of Their Own. I mean, come on. The name truly says it all. I was just kind of blown away by her energy and enthusiasm. It was infectious. And I had this moment during our conversation where I was just like, she's doing exactly what she's supposed to be doing with her life. It was so inspiring. Like she's creating this amazing community of women and men who love women's sports. And finally, they have a bar of their own. And that made me feel so grateful that I, in turn, have this opportunity to not only talk to her, but to go to Minneapolis, record a live show, and then have the after party at her bar. And I know there's a lot of you that are just starting to get to know me, but this is a dream of mine that I've had for such a long time. I've been trying for a long time to figure out how do I combine comedy and women's sports just to elevate these amazing players and teams who have brought us so much joy for so long. And I'm doing it. We're doing it collectively. We are raising the bar for women's sports. So if you live in Minneapolis or adjacent, God, I love the word adjacent. On Sunday, October 27th, 6 p.m., I'll be doing a Herlights Live at Roxy's Cabaret. And then after the entire audience, we're picking up and we're headed to a bar of their own to celebrate. I can't freaking wait. And I can't wait for you to hear our fun conversation. So let's jump right in. So excited to talk to you. I've got a myriad of nerd fest questions about life, women's sports bars, women's sports, a bar of their own. Love the title. I know you've probably been asked this before, but you got to tell us the origin story because I love this so much I can't stand it.
Yeah, I mean, when we first were trying to come up with a name for the bar, we were really kind of going back and forth between a couple of different ideas, and we kept coming back to a bar of their own. I'm a huge League of Their Own fan. I love the movie. I actually love the Netflix series even better than I love the movie. And it just felt right. We kept coming back to it, and the more and more we, checked into all the naming conventions, making sure it was available on social media and all that stuff. And it just felt right. So we went ahead with it and it's been awesome. It's been a really, really great fit for us.
Yeah, I mean it's perfect. I guess I found you guys on Instagram and I was like, "Whoa, oh my God." First of all, but it's just the greatest title. But and then I've been sort of I think yours was the first one where I sort of started following the journey. It was right before I did my podcast and I was like, "Oh my God, it was so fun to kind of follow the story." And I'm
Yeah.
sure it was like, pure panic and stress and all of this. But tell us like, how the whole process of getting the idea and then doors open.
Yeah, it's actually crazy to be sitting here today on October 1st when we're recording because we actually publicly launched our website on September 1st of 2023. So we're now like getting to the point of like the Facebook memories are popping up and it's like 1 year ago you did. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been a year. So yeah, I mean, it's been crazy. We publicly launched our website on the 1st. We started a crowdfunding campaign on the 15th. We got into our space on December 1st of last year and then worked like crazy for 3.5 months or 3 months. And we opened to the public on March 1st. And so we've been open now. I guess we just hit our 7 month mark. And it's been absolutely insane nonstop since we started.
My God. So was this like always the dream for you? Like what were you doing before? Like tell us how this came about.
No, I blame Jenny Wynn for everything.
Yes.
I've told her that many times. No, owning a bar was never in my dream calendar, my vision board. No, I worked in nonprofits in higher ed before I jumped into the bar industry. So I spent the first 15 years of my career working with systemically excluded students on getting them to and through college. So helping colleges figure out how to better recruit students of color, low income students, first generation college students, and then did that in the nonprofit sector for 6 years. And then Jenny opened the bra in 2022. And with a bunch of my friends, we all kind of started saying, like, who's going to do that here? Who's going to do that here? And I kept waiting for somebody with far more experience to do it because I have zero business opening a bar. But nobody did it. And so we kind of felt like we had the right community of supporters around us and took a leap. And here we are now. We're have a day 155 of service tomorrow. So we're in it.
That's pretty incredible that you're just like, wait, so, talk to us about like the like you getting your, friends together and talking about this. It's like someone's got to spearhead it. Like there must have been something in you that was like, this has to be me. I'm going to do it.
It was my friends that said it has to be you. Let's be totally honest. I'm sure you can tell I'm like really quiet and shy.
Yes, I can
Um,
barely get a word out of
and
you.
and so that when we started socializing it with friends, and we were saying like, gosh, where would it be in the Twin Cities? What would we call it? Who could we work with? Who do we know? It just kept coming back to like, well, Jillian, it has to be you. Like it has to be you. It has to be you. I'm kind of a connector by nature. I love finding random connections between people and have felt myself really to be a community builder in all of the work that I've done previously. And so and I'm just kind of crazy enough to like do something like this. Like I feel like it's like if anybody's gonna do it, it's gonna be you. And it's hilarious because my wife is not necessarily risk averse in that regard. So I thought convincing her would be a harder thing, and she was totally on board from the jump. So
Wow, that's awesome. I mean,
marry up, marry up.
oh my God. I look at my partner Sarah and I'm like, I will lock the doors from the inside. I am continually to try to trap her absolutely every
Mhm,
single day.
mhm.
Yeah, the risk averse thing is pretty interesting too because obviously you're a huge fan of women's sports, but like the community building, the education, the connection, that really is all part of how women's sports grows, and it really takes, oh my God, it takes everyone and their brother. Now, we'll talk about it later. It's on another level. But when you were thinking about doing this, the timing is really interesting because, of course, it was growing and growing, but it wasn't like it was today. Did you have a plan of like, okay, this is a 5-year plan or 10-year plan, or do you just like jump in and go for it?
Well, I think one consistent theme throughout my professional career is that another reason my friends thought I would be the best person to do it is that I'm really a system disruptor by nature. Like I've never been okay with like the status quo and like things are this is the way the things are. I was always like, nope, that doesn't need to be that doesn't need to be the case. And so once we kind of decided we were going to do it, I had actually spent May or much of 2022 and part of 2023 working for Minnesota Sports and Events on local women's basketball tournaments. So
Mm.
we held the Final Four women's basketball tournament here in 2022, and I worked on that. And then in 2023, we hosted the women's Big Ten tournament, which was the very beginning of like Caitlin Clark Mania.
Yep.
Like it was like people, I mean, she was obviously a junior, but like people were just starting to kind of pay more attention to her. And so when we decided to do it, which was July of 2023, was when I started working on this full time. Um, my goal, and my family knows me well enough to know that when I set that, I'm going to just do whatever the heck I can until it happens, was to be open by the Big Ten tournament in 2024 because Minneapolis was once again hosting the women's Big Ten tournament. And so I
Oh,
was like, we have got to be open by March 6th or the 10th. That's when the tournament's coming. Like hell or high water, we're going to be open by March 6th. And we made it by a week. So we opened on the first and had our first kind of blowout weekend, and then the second weekend was Big Ten tournament, and it was just off to the races from then on.
that's, I need you to plan my life now because that's between your energy and organization skills. I mean, that's what it takes. This is so cool.
Yeah,
I
I'm
love
kind of
that
a
you're just
project
like, boom.
management nerd.
Yeah.
I'm like, I had all of the windows that were taped over had all these big post-it notes of like 3 weeks out, 4 weeks out, 2 weeks out, 1 week out of all the different things we had to get done. And obviously things pivoted and we had to make some changes. I think the hardest thing that I talk to a lot of these now women that are trying to do the same thing in their own community is there's so many domino effects. We couldn't do this until this was done. We couldn't get this done until this got done, and one thing got delayed, and the whole timeline got all messed up. So being flexible in that pre-opening part was super important.
And did you have to bring like a food beverage person? It seems like you've got obviously all the organization skills, but like then you think, well, there's the whole bar food,
Yeah.
restaurant world. How
Yeah.
did
It
that
turns
come
out it
about?
turns out most people that open restaurants are cooks or chefs. Nope, I just like sports.
DoorDash.
Uh, no, yeah, I mean we've been really really lucky in that regard. I hired a restaurant consultant early on in the process who helped me kind of get connected with vendors and make sure that I knew what needed to be happening in terms of everything from food vendors, liquor vendors to like when do you need to have your POS system, your point of sale system up? When do you need to have hiring? When do you need all these things? So I had some really great help from a consultant to kind of help me keep on pace. But we've worked with US Foods, who is our food provider, from the beginning, and they were awesome. We basically kind of gave them a list of here's all the things that we know we want. Here's some really important considerations that we want. So we wanted to make sure that we had lots of stuff for folks with different dietary needs and preferences. We wanted to make sure we had delicious vegan options that started vegan so that our vegan friends didn't have to like make 15 modifications in order to get something that they could actually eat. We have friends with some very severe allergies, and so we are very adamant about like we're a nut-free establishment, which you can take that however
Ooh,
many ways you want.
pun alert.
But then we basically worked with US Foods from the beginning. They brought us into the test kitchen and we are like, we have some ideas. And they made a bunch of food for us. And we were like, yes, yes, no, let's change this. Yes, yes, yes. And they really helped us develop the menu. And then once we obviously got the kitchen staff hired and got into our space, using our equipment, using our things, we made additional changes just while we figured out what we needed to do. But yeah, I mean, this whole thing, I feel like we've just been surrounded by the absolute best people to make so many things work out as smoothly as possible.
It's just overwhelming talking to you, like the amount of, I mean, I could get distracted by like, a sneeze 3 counties away. So the fact that you just like boom, on point, check the boxes. But I also think I can imagine I'm just sitting here like just knowing that the end result, like for me obviously women's sports fan since birth, and I played a ton of stuff. Like the dream has always been to go to a bar and see 5 screens of women's sports. Like I can imagine that kind of like was the drive for you of just like getting through all of this stuff. And did you have nights where you're just like kind of, obviously you had nights where you probably didn't sleep, but you can envision like just a pack of women watching women's sports?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like I I've had the same experience that all women's sports fans have had, right? Of going into places and not ever seeing women's sports on TV. We talk on our website a little bit about the kind of the experience that threw me over the edge was going in to watch a Gopher women's softball tournament. They are participating in the national tournament, and I was at a sports bar that had, I kid you not, 40 some TVs in 2022, and we're sitting there and we're waiting to watch the game. We're a mile and a half from campus, like we're not in the middle of nowhere. And they're like, "Oh, we don't know how to show that." And I was like, What?" And they were showing like reruns of the previous
Bowling.
fall,
Yeah.
like football games, and I was like, "Come on." Um, and so yeah, throughout that process of the building, I mean, we were just like totally zeroed in because we had to be, quite frankly. But there were definitely moments in that in the prep that like certain things would happen, certain milestones would happen that all of a sudden we'd be like, oh my gosh, like this is happening. Like the TVs getting put up. I'll never
Yeah.
forget the day the TVs got hung because we went from a room that literally had only two tiny TVs in the corners of the bar that didn't work, that hadn't been on for years, to all of a sudden having 12 75-inch TVs around the bar. And it was just like all of a sudden it went from like, oh, this is going to be fun to like, holy crap, this is going to be awesome. And so like moments like that, I think really kind of helped continue to motivate us and keep us going throughout that build out process because it was a ton of work.
Oh my, yeah, honestly, I can even imagine. But when you said the TVs, I just got chills. I'm like, oh my God, that's so awesome. I know. Yeah. We've all been there. Like, I also think, I would say in the last, like, 5 or 6 years, I always give this example as when I thought, okay, things are starting to finally change. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, when they started putting NCAA volleyball on ESPN, and
Yeah.
like the sort of December March Madness. I remember being at some random club in like Arizona or something, and I went to this bar just to get some food, and I was like, I was below. I literally remember like the moment like it was yesterday, because I was like, oh my God, like this is starting to happen. Like, did that,
Mhm.
just sort of seeing the attendance and seeing the availability on television, did that give you a sense that, like, this could be done?
Yeah, I mean, I think that 2022 Women's Final Four was absolutely monumental in my world. So I quit my nonprofit job in early of 2022 and started working for myself. I was consulting and helping different people do small projects. And a friend of mine reached out and she was like, "We need somebody to help coordinate the volunteers for the Final Four. I heard you're out of work." And I was like, I am, sure. But that Final Four was so big for so many reasons because it was the first Final Four post COVID. So it was gonna be the first in-person Final Four in 2 years. The biggest thing was it was the first Final Four posted on a Prince's big revelation
Yeah.
of on TikTok of the differences between the men's and women's tournament. And then we had this entire group of women on our local organizing committee that were just so committed to making this event powerful for women, by women, front to end, not a corner unturned. I mean, we were doing everything from, making sure that the second that they found out that they qualified for the Final Four, they had something from us, from women in our community that was like, we're excited you're coming to Minneapolis. Let's go. And so that was super empowering to be around this group of women that were just so committed to making women athletes experiences very positive, that it really like was a great springboard for me because I saw kind of all the excitement around the tournament. Paige Beckers and UConn qualified that year, and she's from Minnesota, so that obviously was a big hubbub locally. We had lots of excitement around that, so we could kind of feel all these different moments happening kind of since we announced, and then it just kind of kept picking up and picking up and picking up, and now I talk to these women who are looking to start their own, and I'm a little bit like, man, like I don't even know what to tell you. Like we're here. Like in some ways we're already here. I mean, obviously there's still so many ways that we can go, but it's been really cool to see this just rapid fire growth in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's funny when people, and most people mean well, but they're like, well, now it's relevant that Caitlin Clark. And then I try to quell my rage, and be supportive, but I want to be like, how much time do you have to talk about this?
Could
Because
you
this has
could
been
you just
growing.
feel could you feel my eye roll into the back of my head when I just rolled my eyes there? Because yeah, we get a lot of people. I mean, again, this is absolutely no shade to Caitlin Clark, obviously. What she
No,
has done
she's
in
an
the
impossible. She
like,
is an impossible to hold up to, like, what. Yeah, I honestly, like. It's not like I feel bad for her, but I want to hug her and be like, it's not all
oh
on you.
God, seriously.
Oh
I keep
God,
having to tell people like she's 22 years
she's
old.
a baby.
Like her frontal lobe hasn't even fully developed yet. Like we're putting all this pressure on her for
Oh, it's
the,
too much.
but
Yeah,
but it is. I mean, it's great to have new attention to the W, but not everything that brings with that is positive. And so I think
yeah.
it has been, it's a lot of educating, and I think a lot of fans, most fans that we encounter at the bar in particular, want to learn that history. Like they don't think women's basketball just started. But there's, most people online, a lot of trolls on the internet that think that, all of a sudden women's basketball dropped out of the sky, and as if the W hasn't been, busting their butts for the last 25 years to get to this level. So I do really think it's really, really important that we pay homage to those folks that led the way ahead of us. And, for me, that's obviously Jenny, and kind of cracking open this recess in my brain that I didn't know I had. But in women's sports more generally, there's just so many trailblazers that have come ahead of us that I want to make sure get proper recognition in all the work that we're doing right now too.
Oh, absolutely. I try to remain calm, and then when I I often don't. I'm not gonna lie, but I'll just throw out some names, and they're like, "Huh?" And I'm like, "Okay, let's sit down. We're gonna, across like all sports." You mentioned this sort of mentorship. I'd love to hear about that. Like, are you getting calls from, like, a Pam in St. Louis being like, "We got a shed. Let's do this." I love this.
I mean, it's kind of cool. We jokingly kind of started this group chat a long time ago. I mean, so we announced in September of last year I bet by October, I had already been connected with like 5 other women that were trying to do this. And they're like, how are you doing it? I'm like, I don't know. We haven't done it yet. But we kind of started this group and yeah, it just continues to grow. It's so fun. I mean, I know I've talked to people in Atlanta, Chicago, New York, Indianapolis, Denver, the Watch Me women out in Long Beach I've worked with. Just yesterday talked to Deborah down in Austin. I mean, there's just people all over that are looking to bring this kind of idea to their own spaces. And, now Jenny started franchising, which is like another huge door that's going to open up for so many people. And it's just so exciting to think about how one little decision that Jenny made, which was obviously this massive decision in her life, but how it really has just changed how we think and approach women's sports viewership because it was impossible. It still is pretty hard to be a casual women's sports fan. And now we have people that come into our bar because they've like heard about it and they come in and they leave like knowing more about lacrosse because that happened to be what we were watching on TV. And they got into a conversation with somebody sitting next to them about how does this lacrosse thing work? And pretty soon, they're leaving the bar being like, we should check out a lacrosse game. I mean, it's so cool to see these kind of casual encounters lead to continued advancement of the movement just by being a space, just by existing.
I mean, that's the key. Someone's got to go somewhere, see it on television, sit next to a person, be educated, be excited. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's enthusiasm, it's energy, it's
Mhm.
passion. And also that's really like I think what resonates with women versus men too. I mean, I think women are just natural communicators. So sitting down with someone and being like, oh my God, oh, you like her? Let me tell you about this one. And it's
Absolutely.
storytelling, it's in the moment, it's energy. So obviously, like that's just huge. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that. First of all, I cannot wait to go to your bar. We'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. I want to talk to you about just curious about like opening night. Or was it the morning or
We
because I know
opened
you
at
had like
noon. We
okay,
opened
that's
at
what it was.
noon on March 1st. Yeah.
Like what
Yeah.
were you thinking the night before? I love these moments. Like were you like
I
drunk in a pure panic? Like what was going on?
I tend to be like the good washed up athlete I am. One of the things that I continue to say to this day is control the controllables, right? Like that's the way I operated as an athlete. That's the way I operated when we were planning our wedding. That's the way we operated when we were planning the bar opening, right? Like there were certain things that we knew we could control, and there was going to be a whole bunch of stuff out of our control. So we really worked hard to make sure that we had everything that we could ready to go. We got our liquor license 2 days before our soft opening. So, like, I mean, we're talking literally, I have like beer trucks circling the streets. And I'm like, I got the license. And they're like, we're dropping off. I mean, it was just like, it was chaos. And so that part of it was a little bit nerve wracking. But to the point that we got on opening day on March 1st, we were so excited. Like, my
Yeah.
team is incredible. Like, to this day, we're 7 months in, and everybody that works for me has worked for me since we opened, which in the service industry is like
Wow.
insanity. But they're just the best. Like I hired service professionals that are excited about what we're doing. I intentionally didn't hire all women's sports fans because, like tonight, my Lynx are taking on the Connecticut Sun in the round two. I want to be able to go to the game. So if
Yeah.
all my staff want to go to the game, like so
That
we
isn't
we had,
forward thinking right there. I love it.
I wasn't giving up my season tickets. You can't give them away from me. But I think that night before we had a little team meeting the day before, just trying to make sure that we had all gone through everything, and everybody was just so excited. I think one of the best things I did was I called Jenny the week before we opened and basically was like, "What am I forgetting? Like
Yeah.
you've gone through this." She and I had talked a lot about what her opening weekend was like, and I was like, "What am I forgetting?" And she was like, you got it. She's like, the thing I'm going to tell you is what I wish somebody would have told me, which is at some point during that opening weekend, make sure you just stop and like step back and just like watch what's happening because it's so easy to just get so hung up in all the chaos of, this order went out wrong or that person got seated too early or whatever it is, that it's really easy to just get hung up in all of that stuff without really appreciating like what the heck you've built. And so that was really great. We took several moments like that to just kind of like step back and be like, holy crap. Like there are people sitting in the restaurant that we bought 4 months ago. Like this is nuts. And it was cool because we actually, a lot of those moments were actually documented because we were working with a local documentarian, not a local documentarian, a national documentarian who's working on a documentary all about women's sports bars. And so she was there filming basically the entire weekend. And so it's so cool. I can't wait to see the final product because so many of those moments were like literally captured on film for a documentary. And so seeing what going back and reliving those, I feel will be a little surreal, but I'm really, really glad. At the time when I agreed to it, I was like, who agrees to a like all access documentary the week you open a bar? And now I'm like, I'm so glad we did that because like they were there, they were in it for the whole thing. You know, we ran out of chicken wings the first weekend and we're cruising around town trying to see if we can find chicken wings anywhere. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
stuff happens and we got a lot of it recorded. So it'll be really cool to see all that how it plays out.
Oh my God. I cannot wait to see that. And like, that's such good advice. Like, people say that about your wedding too, right? Like,
Yes.
just take a moment, remember who you're marrying, how many, when you run out of the chicken wings, which could happen at both events, I guess. But that's great that you had the documentary. Oh my God, bring it on.
I
And,
can't wait. I've seen some previews for it and I'm like so geeked out about it.
oh my God. Yeah, because I would, the stories of like how these moments came about and like you're living them, that's just going to be so
Yeah.
cool. There could be
Yeah.
like a documentary of like, someone's like, I bowled once and I'm like, put it on. Like, so this stuff about is going to be absolutely fantastic. All right, let's get nerdy about I'm obsessed with like fandom. So and the crowds at your bars. Like, what are Lynx fans like? Do they eat differently? Do they drink differently than the PWHL crowds? Like, I love this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we've been so lucky. I mean, one of the reasons I knew this would be successful in Minneapolis is that we have so many women's sports teams here. Obviously, we have the Lynx, we have the PWHL hockey team, which before they were not
They
a
weren't even
lot.
there, right?
They weren't
Yeah.
even around when we decided to open. And then
Yeah.
we were like, they're like, by the way, we're opening in 2 months. And I was like, cool, we're
And we're
gonna
gonna win the whole thing.
gonna be great. But we have a semi-professional soccer team as part of the USL League here. We have great athletics with the University of Minnesota and the rest of the kind of local colleges. And so it's been really fun to kind of see how the different fan groups show up, particularly like during the Olympics. Like that was also a really interesting time to figure out, like, I mean, it made staffing hell. I'm not going to lie. It's
Yeah.
like, are people going to show up for lacrosse? Are they going to show up for basketball? Like, what are they going to show up for? But I think overall, one of the consistent themes that I continue to find with our fans is that like people are super worried they're not going to find a spot, so they come early, which bless their hearts. You know, we got people showing up. We're opening tonight. We're normally not open on Tuesdays, but we're opening tonight for round two WNBA games, and we open at 6. I bet we'll have people standing at the door at 4 o'clock, just like, gotta make sure I get a spot, you know, like gotta
No
make sure we get.
way.
Yeah, so that's fun. We get soccer fans are psychotic, like USA women's soccer fans. It's been interesting. This is when you talk about fandom. Here's one thing that we're trying to figure out. We don't have an NWSL team here in Minnesota, but we have fans of all these different NWSL teams, and it seems like we have different pockets for a lot of the different NWSL teams. But for the US women's soccer games, Olympics, any of those games, like we're talking around the block, over the neighborhood lines, like just insanity. But then for NWSL games, we'll get like, 2 people are in for the current game and 3 people are in for the Spirit game. And my theory is that for the Lynx and the basketball, it was the opposite. Like USA basketball, we were like, is anybody coming in for the USA women's basketball game during the Olympics? But then our Lynx games were packed, which makes sense.
Mhm.
And I think it's that for women's soccer fans, particularly in our area, we haven't had these team fandoms to be building as long as we have for US women's team. So like US women's team fans are just crazy. Whereas you get these Lynx fans that have been Lynx fans for 25 years. They're like, USA basketball, man, they're going to win. It's not that big of a deal. It's like we take for granted how great our athletes are. But I would say in terms of food and beverage, I haven't noticed many differences. Now you got me curious. I'm going to have to go back and look to see, are there more wings eaten by, hockey fans than by basketball fans? I think one of the perks for us is that we very intentionally kept our menu small and made sure everything was really good so that we don't really have a loser on the menu. And so that makes it easy, I think, for folks too to come in and find something that they love, regardless of what sport they're watching. Everybody
That's
likes to
yeah.
drink.
Well, I had a yeah. All right, let's do that question first. The drinking, that's what I was talking to Jen Barnes in Seattle, and she was like, she had such distinct. I mean, she's been open a lot, longer than you, but she had such distinction of like, the soccer fans are IPA drinkers or whatever, but they don't have a women's hockey. But I was like, is it like men's hockey where they come in and they just start fighting and they're just hammered on the beer, or is there more lady behavior?
Here's what I say about our guests is that at a lot of sports bars, women's fans in particular are sick and tired of going to what I call men's sports bars. Because you're always going to get mansplained, right? Like you're going to sit at the bar and watch a football game, and somebody's going to try to explain to you how a first down works. At our bar, the people that typically do that kind of thing at men's sports bars are so emasculated by the idea that we even exist that they don't come. Like, seriously, like we have the best guests in the world because the guys that do come, because we're open to everybody, we want it to be
Yeah.
family friendly. We want, kids to come in. The guys that do come are like, just love women's sports. And so they're not coming to like try to pick up women because a lot of our guests are queer. Not everybody, but a lot of them are. So it's not like they're trying to come to pick up women. They're just coming because their favorite team is on. And so we just don't get rowdy people. Like it's literally the best. I mean, my staff, well, like I said, have been working in the service industry, most of them their entire lives. They're like, our customers are unlike anything I've ever experienced anywhere else. Our like do not enter list, or what we call our 86 list, is 4 people long, and it's all dudes. And it's usually dudes that came in at like the end of the night, and we were a stop on their many stops throughout the night, and they tried to pull something, and we're like, nope, we're not that kind of bar. That's not how we act here. Like, see you later. So yeah, we don't have rowdy fans. I mean, we get excited fans like cheering, but not like drunk and stupid.
No, like lesbian infighting, like one of the couples is like a Lynx fan, the other one's a Connecticut Sun fan, and they just
Let me
take.
tell you the amount of lesbian web stories that have come out of the bar. It's like L Word live. It is incredible. Like people are like, "Oh, I dated that person sitting over there," and they're like, "No, I did too." Like, wait, what? Like it's incredible. It's absolutely beautiful. I love it to death.
Oh my God, that's awesome. How did the relationship with like the local teams come about? It seems like you had some existing, but then where you're like, hey, I've got this magical place, come hang out.
We're so lucky. I started working with a lot of the teams long before we opened, because I really wanted to make sure that we were taking those people and their fans into consideration when we were building the space. Like, I didn't want it to be, it was really intentional that I didn't want it to be a Lynx bar. I love the Lynx, they're my team, but I wanted to make sure that we had representation of all of the different sports that were happening, not even just in Minnesota. Somebody actually just messaged me and said they had a signed Ellie towel from Sabrina and Stewie that they're sending that we're gonna hang at the bar. You
I
can
will
maybe,
rip it off your
I was
wall
gonna
and
say,
shove it in my
you
bag.
can touch it when you come. um, but I think for us, one of the big things was making sure that we had really good connections that felt authentic. Like it wasn't for me about like I need stuff for my walls. It was like I want you and your fans to feel represented here, and for this to be a place that we can all be really pumped about. So yeah, I really started working with all of them long before we opened. The links have just been outstanding. Carly Knox, who's Coach Reeves' wife, is the president of basketball operations, I think is her title. She's been incredible and a huge support for me. The Minnesota Aurora, our soccer team, have hosted different events for us at the bar during the Olympics. They came into Minnesota soccer trivia at all the half times.
So cool.
The hockey team brought us. There are 3 inaugural sticks from each team, and the inaugural team sticks from each of the 6 teams, and we have one of the 3 PWHL Minnesota inaugural sticks. Like they're like, it has to be at your bar. And I was like,
Oh my God,
so
this is so cool.
like it's been great to see how it builds and develops with each different team. And it means something different, right? Like some of the teams are like, we just want people to know we exist. Like we have a
Yeah.
professional women's tackle football league team here in Minnesota Vixen. And a lot of people don't even know who they are. So we hang their jersey front and center. And we want people to know, like, what is the Vixen? We want them to ask those questions. most people in town know the links. So it's not that we don't have link stuff up, but it's like we want to make sure that we're giving exposure to some of these teams and leagues that aren't as well known because they just want people to know that they're around. So ultimate frisbee, roller derby, bandy, which is a sport we can talk about. All of these different sports that exist, we wanted to give exposure to all of them. This is also something you may need to edit out, but we just got a package from the Indiana Fever at my house. And I just told my wife, I was like, go open this. Because if it's a Clark jersey, we need to open it while we're
What if
recording
it's
live
Caitlin
with
Clark in the box and
what if
she
it is
pops
Caitlin
out?
Clark in the box? Oh my gosh, they brought an entire, there's so many things in this box from the Fever. It's absolutely insane.
Can you hang up Fever stuff on your wall? I guess you can,
Oh
right?
my God, there's so much Fever stuff. There's there's an entire team in this box, I think there might be an entire Fever team in this box. Oh, here we go.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
I'm
That
gonna
is
have to
amazing.
literally live in person. I was like,
Uh,
this might be awkward, but go get the box because if it's something cool, I
we're
want to
not
open it while
editing
live.
this out. This is awesome.
Welcome to being a women's sports bar owner. Weird stuff like this happens all the time.
That's not weird. This is an Aaron Foley dream sequence where you just open up a package and it's signed jerseys from WNBA players. Come on. I love that we're doing this live slash recording it on a podcast. This is the stuff that I like totally geek out about. I was doing a show years ago in Madison, Wisconsin, and this woman came up to me after the show. She was hammered. It's fine. She was wearing a University of Wisconsin hockey jersey.
Oh yeah.
And she said,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is blah, blah, blah's jersey." And she's like, "She's my ex. And you know what? I'm kind of over her." And she takes the jersey off. She had something underneath, hands it to me. And I go, "Seriously, I'm going to keep this." And she's like, "Yeah." And I literally just wore the hockey jersey from Madison for like 2 days. So you opening up a box of Indiana stuff, this is awesome. My partner Sarah's like, she's like, why are you keeping all of this? I was like, for my future women's sports cave. I mean, I'm not going to throw out anything.
We joked the other day that we're becoming a little bit like the women's sports thrift shop now because we have people that just are like, here, I cleaned out my basement, and they just like bring like boxes worth of stuff into the bar, and I'm like, oh,
Great.
I'm gonna have to figure out what to do with all of this stuff. But no, I mean, I can't wait for you to see it because all the memorabilia in our walls has been donated from people, whether from its athletes or its teams or fans. Like very similar to this, one day long before we opened, a box showed up at my front door, and I opened the box, opened the door, and it said like from Lindsay Elizabeth Whalen. And I was like, clearly that's not like Lindsay Whalen sending me a box. And I opened it, and it was a Lindsay Whalen signed jersey that she wore in the 2017 WNBA Finals.
Oh my God. All your dreams are coming true. This is the best thing ever. I love it. I love this
Yeah.
geekdom. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what seriously, like, that's what it's all about. I mean, would you say like this is like the most unexpected? Like, that was one of my, like, what is like the most unexpected, joyful thing that you couldn't have planned?
Billie Jean King came
That's on
to
my
our
notes right there.
bar.
Billie Jean. All right. You have to tell the listeners about this.
This is well, and it's actually kind of sad for in some regards because I actually wasn't at the bar the day she came.
Oh God.
I know, I
This
know.
the story takes a dark turn.
Plot thickens. So Billie Jean is one of the investors in the PWHL, and so I had been watching throughout the whole season, and she had gone and visited all these different teams and all the different leagues, and she hadn't been to Minnesota yet, and so I like would just kind of casually comment when I saw her like in Boston. I was like, "Hey, when you come to Minnesota, make sure you stop at the bar." And I'd get like a heart emoji, and like that would fulfill me for like 2 months. Like I was like, Billie
Yeah.
Jean saw my Instagram post. Like I'd freak out. And then it was getting close to the end of the season. She still hadn't come. Minnesota was in the playoffs, and it was Memorial Day weekend. And so I was like, she's got to come this weekend. Like it's got to happen because there was a really good chance that they were going to win on Sunday night, which would have meant that they were going to win Sunday, which meant they would have won the tournament. So I messaged her on the Friday before, and I was like, just a reminder, like if you happen to be in town this weekend for any particular reason, like we'd love to have you stop into the bar. Here's our address. Like happy to provide any information. And she liked it. And so I was like, okay. Well, my sister and her wife live in Seattle, Washington, and they come to Minnesota like 2 times a year. And my little nephew Jack, who's the sweetest thing you've ever seen, was also coming with them. He's 2 years old, and they were coming back Memorial Day weekend and staying at my parents' house, which is like an hour away from the Twin Cities. And so my wife was like, "Are you really gonna go knowing that like Billie Jean King is probably coming in this weekend?" And I was like, "Uh-huh,
Wow.
uh-huh." I really am because like I never get to see them and
Yeah.
I didn't know that she was gonna come in. Like I had a good feeling about it, but I didn't know. And I knew regardless of if she did come in, it would be a very short visit, and I wasn't gonna like give up seeing my family, who I love and miss so dearly, just to see Billie Jean. That sounds terrible. Um, but it was crazy because it's Sunday nights we close at 10. And so we had watched the game at my parents' house. Minnesota lost, so it pushed it to the next game. And we were like, oh, well, she's probably not going to come in anyway. And if we open on Tuesday for the game, like maybe she'll come in Tuesday. My Instagram get a notification, Billie Jean King, we're on our way. And I was like, I'm an hour away from the bar. We close in like 15 minutes. So I like pick up the phone, I call my manager, and I'm like, Billie Jean King coming in. Don't shut the bar down. Like, don't let anybody leave. Like, don't tell people what's happening, but like, don't shut anything down. And so everybody stayed. One of my friends I found out was at the bar, and I like texted them and I was like, don't leave. I'm not going to tell you why, but don't leave. And then it was actually like super nerdy because we have a security camera at the bar that like faces the front door. And we literally like pulled it up on my parents' TV, like from my phone. I can, remote in. And we watched Billie Jean King arrive at the bar, like on my parents' like TV.
It's amazing. This is amazing.
And she was just as wonderful and delightful as you would absolutely imagine her to be. It's hilarious because we have this life-size Billie Jean King cutout right when you walk in the door. And so she saw it and she like picked it up and like was like, hey, look at this. And she signed it. And it's still standing by our front door. So people walk in and it looks like they're being greeted by Billie Jean King when they walk in the door. But she went around and shook everybody's hand, all of the staff, every guest that we had. My friend that happened to be at the bar, their mom has been like a huge women's sports advocate. And they texted me like in 10 minutes later and they're like, my mom is bawling. Like,
Oh
oh
my
my
God, I'm
gosh,
gonna
she
cry.
cannot believe what's happening right now. And then she signed our wall. So we have a pro athlete wall. And she signed our wall. And I mean, I got to FaceTime with her. So I did like meet her. I called my manager on FaceTime and I was like, pick up, pick up, pick up, pick up. And she did. And so we sat there and she was like, I like your glasses.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah, I mean, I freaked out. I took so many screenshots of us FaceTiming. But I mean, so cool. That was just a moment that I think was, totally unexpected to have something like that happen. Really, there's so many of them. Like Simone Augustus came in when she was back in town for her Hall of Fame celebration here for the Lynx game, and like just like casually walked in on a Sunday morning, and like I happened to
No
be there.
warning?
No, just came in, and I was like sitting at a table because I happened to be there like with friends who were in town for the big Lynx weekend, and I'm sitting at the table, and I was like, like there's somebody with like who's 6
Seven,
whatever,
8. Yeah.
clearly wearing like a designer sweatsuit, not like my like roll out of bed, but like some designer sweatsuit, big dreads. I'm like, I think that's Simone Augustus at the front door. And just like walk over there and my like lose my mind, don't know how to talk. So yeah, I mean there's just been so many moments where we've just had just really really cool folks come in. My favorite moment, and I can't wait, I got to be there when you walk in for the first time, because one of my favorite things is just seeing people's reactions when they come in, because it just feels different. Like everything about the space feels different than a traditional sports bar. It's brighter. You walk in and you see Maya Moore's huge fat head right when you walk in, and her wings poster over above the windows. Like it just automatically just feels different. And just to see people's reaction is like my favorite thing every single day. Somebody new comes in, and I just love seeing people respond to that.
Oh, I'm gonna cry. I'm just gonna warn you. I literally cry when I think about sports. And so when I go in there, Yours, yeah. So I literally cannot wait. It's just going to be, there's nothing that makes me happier than being around women's sports fans. And now I get to go to like women's sports bars. Like,
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Thank you on
Oh,
behalf
yeah.
of like absolutely everybody.
Yeah.
And I was hoping you were going to mention the cardboard cutout just to add on to the story on Instagram. One of the funniest things was you kept moving the cardboard cutout around. Billie Jean King behind the register, and I just was dying. I think that's actually one of the first times that we connected because I made that whole story a feel good moment of the week. And then, okay, I just have to say this really quick. She was my feel good moment of the week last week because of the Congressional Medal of Honor,
Yes.
right? Okay, you ready? She liked my post and then commented with like the little whatever prayer hands or whatever, like thank you hands, whatever they are. And I lost my mind. I was
Yeah.
screaming in the car. I was at a gig in Santa Rosa, like literally commentating on a pickleball tournament, just screaming.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can absolutely relate to that.
Yeah, when you said she hearted it, I was like, oh, I know. Like she's the queen of all. Okay, last question. Just overall, obviously, women's sports, I mean, the timing couldn't be better, obviously, for you for already to start it when it's here. Now it's through the roof, but just women's sports, but also specifically women's sports bars. Are we now, you think, at the start of just like every city potentially could have one where you think this is like the start of the movement?
I really do. I really do. I mean, again, even if my inbox is any indication based on the conversations that I've had with women from around the country that are looking to do the same thing, I think it's so cool to see how again, this spark that Jenny started has just really ignited this whole movement across the country and the world. Like, there's one that opened in London, there's one that's open in Australia. Like, it's happening all over the place. And it really just took somebody to say, like, it doesn't have to always be this way, to make all of us aware that something like this would not only be successful, but was so needed for our community. I mean, I think that's one of the things I love the most is people coming in and just feeling like I've never felt safe watching sports at a sports bar before. And like, I love coming here knowing that it's safe, it's inclusive. I can bring my family, I can bring my parents, I can bring whoever I want. And this can be that place. And so it's exciting to think about where we'll be in, gosh, 5 years, but even 2 years. I joked with Jenny during one of my very first calls with her that I wanted to somehow make like a passport that you had to like get a stamp at all the women's
Oh
sports
yeah.
bars. And that was when I was like, wouldn't it be cool if there were like five of these in the country? And now I'm like, I mean, we're going to be at 20 in, 2 years maybe. And that's just like absolutely incredible to think about. And I think the biggest thing that, for your listeners and for you and for just awareness, like I think the access to capital continues to be the biggest challenge. Like every single person I talk to is like, how did you finance this? And we got denied an SBA loan just like Jenny did. I mean, I think it's really hard for women in particular to gain access to capital. And so, that any way that folks can continue to support the growth of these things, like we got a lot of flack for crowdfunding our bar. Like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if you could just crowdfund your idea? And I was like, wouldn't it be nice if I could just get a bank loan to do the thing that most men do without even thinking about it? But it wasn't possible for us. And so I know it feels like there's a lot of these crowdfundings that keep popping up for different bars, but I'm like, please help support this because we need more of these places and women just can't get access to capital in the same way that men can.
Yeah, that is such a great point. I mean, first of all, someone shitting on crowdfunding, that's how everybody gets anything made. I mean, that's completely insane. Well, that's
They were
just a
they were
dumb
they
perspective. I
they were
mean,
men. I'm sure that
well,
surprises
obviously,
you.
I mean, it's just dumb. People just don't understand that there's another perspective. There's another whole gender out there that struggles at times. But yeah, just an overall congratulations. I just want to one last thing when you were talking about the environment of the bar and that's what when people first start going to live women's sports events, whether it's whatever soccer, like for me out here the ACFC, like everyone their takeaway is like, oh my god, like the energy was so great, we bring our family, it's so fun to see, like, and you're like that, so it just feels like this amazing microcosm of like
Yeah.
from the stadium to the bar. It's that same feel good energy and support and inclusivity, which is just so wonderful to hear. I'm so I'm so happy for you, and I cannot wait to be there. Just overall, you're a goddamn delight, and I'm so psyched to meet you in person. And I'm
Same.
just hanging out with you for 40 minutes. I'm like, now I know why all your friends recommended you to start this. It makes perfect sense that your friends were like, yeah, you're the one. Jillian Hiscock, ladies and germs. Oh my God, I love her. I think my favorite moment was when she like couldn't wait to open the box from the Indiana Fever. And then she pulls out the jersey with all, with all the players' signatures. And I was like kind of experiencing that in real time, like geeking out as much as she was geeking out. By the way, I do record all of these on, and I put the episodes up on YouTube. So go ahead and watch that moment because her face lit up and it was just, all right, it was awesome. It was awesome. Okay, people, it's a feel good moment of the week, and it is so precious. So Naomi Osaka played Coco Gauff in the China Open last week, and it was a great match. Osaka takes the first set, Gauff takes a second set, and everybody's geared up for the third set. And then, unfortunately, Osaka has to pull out of the match because of a back injury, which is like such a bummer because it's been amazing to have Osaka back on the tour this year. So, in the ultimate display of sportsmanship, as Osaka's leaving the court, Goff goes over to her and picks up like the heavy tennis bags so Osaka doesn't have to carry them because she's got a back injury. Oh my God, it was so feel good. It was just like the most precious moment. I mean, they've been friends for a really long time, and it was so nice to see that even though they're like ultra competitive and they're playing against each other on the court, that off the court, they can still be so supportive of each other. Oh my God, I love women's sports.